Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be a little bit of an interesting video. After 5 years of a lot of track and street abuse and 20 PSI of boost, we unfortunately popped our 07K. And today I want to find out why and exactly what happened. For those of you that don't know, this is a 5-cylinder. It's actually originally out of a Volkswagen. They had them in the Rabbit, the Beetle, the Jetta, some others, and the engine code is the 07K. It's a 2.5 liter inline 5-cylinder that we developed a kit for to be able to put it in the Porsche 944 and Porsche 968. So that's the background info, and this was actually the original development car, original development engine and kit and everything else. So this one has been a lot of fun. It's been the Boost Brothers mobile for 5 years, and I'm very anxious to see exactly why it popped. With this being the original development car, we're pretty thrilled that everything lasted as long as it did, but we do know there were some shortcomings with the way that we originally designed the turbo kit, if you will, and specifically in regards to heat management. And we think that's probably what happened. So as we go through and we start taking parts off to figure out what happened, I'll also show you exactly what we think is going on down here. A lot of heat soak, issues with the turbo and the turbo manifold, that not sealing because of things warping. We just had a ton of heat management issues, including really high IATs at the track the day that it popped. So we'll explain what we're talking about and give you some ideas as to what we're looking to do to fix it. The first thing I really want to do, and mainly just because I'm nosy, is I want to take the valve cover off. We haven't done compression testing, leak down, we have not done anything. It lost power, and we said, screw it, we've already got an engine we're building that's fully forged, so let's take the opportunity to rip this thing out. It could be a broke ringland on a piston, it could be a drop valve, we don't know. Now that we've got the valve cover off, we can at least do a quick visual inspection of the valve train. You can reach in, feel around on all the followers here. Nothing immediately pops out as an issue. My educated guess is that high IATs and some overboosting that may or may not have happened led to one of the piston rings touching and popping the ringland and causing a failure. Oh, look at that electrode, ground strap, whatever, it's gone. Whoa. I'm wondering if something came up and contacted that. That doesn't look like just it got melted. That looks like something hit it. It looks like we're gonna be scoping out that cylinder first. And I should know whether it's number 1 or number 5, but I get confused every single time. So comment down below, I'm an idiot, and tell me if it's the front or the back. Timing chain side or crank pulley side, number 1. When I talk about scoping an engine, I want to show you exactly what we're talking about. So this right here is a scope that we got off Amazon, oh boy. Basically it hooks up to your phone, and it's got a camera on the end with a light. You can stick it in any hole. You be careful which hole you stick it in, and you can figure out what's going on in there. So Alan's hooking it up right now. And on the end, you can have it like this, where it's got a mirror for a right angle, or you can take the mirror off and just see straight down. And then boom, right there on the phone. All right, here we go. Oh boy. That is a lot of shit on top of that piston and some scoring. Yeah, I think we found our failure, boys and girls. Now the question we need to answer is why. And again, we were tracking some pretty high IATs and we were struggling with controlling boost at the time. Real quick, this is the inside of Alan's engine bay, and as you can see, he put some additional heat shielding material there. It still burnt all the paint down there. And actually a bigger part of that I forgot was we kept having this adapter piece right here. So basically we had a T3 flange here and we had a V-band here, and this is the Garrett V-band. So we needed to adapt this to this. And by putting this adapter in here, we were actually able to clock the turbo as well. So it helped a lot with packaging. But this is just a insanely high heat area right here. And this continued to warp this flange right here on the adapter piece. Alan actually had to completely braze this together. So basically welded the adapter to the turbo manifold. We had a ton of issues getting the tile 38mm wastegate to continue to seal against the manifold itself. It doesn't matter what we did with these fasteners. We tried Nord locks, we safety wired. These stage 8 fasteners finally worked. Here's one of the old Nord lock bolts. Oh, and there you go. Even with the stage 8s, that's what it's like. We have not loosened this yet. And that's why you see all these heat shields in here. Because Alan kept having so many issues melting his wastegate lines, he tried silicone, he tried some braided stainless. He ended up finding these basically stainless hard lines with the banjo fitting, and then it's just further on down the line stuck into a normal silicone wastegate hose. But it's stuff like this that unfortunately cost us a few track weekends. You know, you get there and you hope everything's good, and your third session of the day on Saturday, all of a sudden your boost control lines are melted, and it makes for an angry Alan, which is understandable. Suffice to say, when we put in the new engine, the one that's completely forged on the inside, and start to really push it, we are changing how we are mounting the turbo, we're changing how we manage heat. And another thing to help control these IATs is we are changing to a significantly larger intercooler. I'll show you the original intercooler here. And this was nothing crazy. This, I believe, was eBay special, right, Alan? And so this was an eBay special. Here's the Mishimoto oil cooler we used, which we never had issues controlling oil temps. I don't know the answer, so I'm going to look in here and see if it's bar and plate. It is bar and plate, which is a stronger design, but it does not radiate, dissipate the heat, whatever you want to call it, nearly as well as a tube and fin does. Alan would use the term emissivity, I believe. He schooled me one time when I tried to talk about how cool Cerakote was. And he taught me the term emissivity, and that's the amount of heat a certain material will radiate. I think. That's what I remember anyway. So, for more emissivity, we got a Waymo bigger intercooler. This is actually very similar to like an APR design for the Audi SQ5. And as you can see, it is legitimately more than double the size. It is, it's so large that we really had to finagle it in there and find, you know, the right spot that allowed A, the hood to still close, but B, not be lower than your core support or your radiator or anything like that, to where you're going to hit the intercooler before you hit anything else. And we succeeded. It's not mounted permanently yet, but it's on its way. And then we're also going to do more of a full welded intercooler piping setup and use like the Vibrant quick couplings or the one that Justin Linder sells, LPS Fab Alpha Locks. In talking about the heat management, as you can see, we used header wrap everywhere we could. We have additional heat shields here. This is an off-the-shelf piece. This is a piece of stainless that Alan formed with a hammer himself. And then we also have this stainless up here. The reason for this heat shield here was the original valve cover that we used for this design had the coils facing this direction towards the exhaust. So the wiring harness went the same direction, and we really needed something here to protect the wiring harness from all this heat. We have since redesigned the valve cover, and it has the harness going the other direction towards the intake, which makes way more sense, and right next to the fuel injectors. And we also got rid of the tall breather box on the back that was a secondary piece. There will just be a threaded boss in the valve cover for your AN fitting to come off for your crankcase ventilation. Another heat shield that I forgot to discuss earlier, this one right here was pretty paramount. One of the main reasons being your oil galleys that drain from the head are on this side of the engine. This is covering where those are. And also, it's just so close to this cylinder. We were really concerned about cylinder temperatures being higher on this one than necessarily the rest of the engine. So if you're gonna run a turbo setup like this, I think it's imperative to put a heat shield here. And oh boy, what do we have here? It looks like some water in the front 3 cylinders. Interesting. Oh, and the back one. The only reason this one doesn't is because the valves are open. Turns out that's not water, that's oil. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think it's supposed to be like that. That's all the head bolts. We got the timing chain and everything off back here. Got to be careful as we lift the head, but let's get it out of here. Chain. I had to put the camera down for a second because we got stuck on that chain, but I have seen the piston. What's left of it. You want to see? Ooh, baby. Looks like all the other cylinders are okay. But, yeah, that one, not so much. Let's take a quick look at the head. And the chamber area is beat up, but the valves somehow still look to be intact. With that hole in the piston there, I'm assuming pressurized the crankcase and pushed all that oil into the intake manifold, because when we took everything out, the catch can was completely full. So that explains all the oil in the intake runners. It looks like it got really, really toasty. Either that or the ringland just broke and then that just melted away the aluminum, or is down in the crankcase. I don't know, but yeah, pretty solid failure there. As we're sitting here brainstorming why this happened now and potentially how far back it started, Alan told me he wasn't ever really monitoring IATs until the 2 last track events, which were both at 90C. And we're wondering if when he converted the front end to the 968, if that created an issue, because when we originally installed the intercooler, we had the placement set up for the 944 front bumper. And apparently there's a little more plastic in the way in the 968 front bumper, so it doesn't get as much airflow. So maybe that was just a big oversight on our part. I will leave you guys there. All the action. When we come back next time, we'll have the other engine done, and we will start going through how to install these things with all of the lessons we've learned over the years, how to do it right the first time, so you can learn from our mistakes. Stick around for that. Should be a good one.